Welcome to Registered, the podcast of the Catholic Register, where we'll be taking a look at the stories that graced all of our platforms over the last few weeks. I'm Mickey Conlon, editor of the Register, alongside associate editor Quinton Amundson and reporter Luke Mandato. And yes, you heard that right. Associate editor Quinton Amundson. How does that feel?
It really feels good to, continue on with the Register in this new role, and I think it's going to be, very exciting. Helping on the editorial side, we've already had our first meeting, and we already have so many different exciting projects in the work throughout the year. So stay tuned.
Well, and part of those projects is as we're still getting our feet wet with this podcast, and we've got plans to keep expanding on it. So stay tuned, and as we wish you all a happy New Year as well. So maybe it wasn't such a happy New Year in some places because it started off with a big bang. And actually, even a few days before, but we'll start with, of course, Venezuela and the U.S. President Donald Trump. He flexed his muscles there as he'd been threatening for an awful long time, and of course, Venezuela, very near and dear to Catholics. Very much a Catholic country, so there's very much interest there. So I guess we can talk about it. The arrest of the dictator, and I will not call him president. I would have before, but I read one of the expats, Venezuelan expats, that says, "Don't you dare call him president," because he's not. He lost his election. But Nicolás Maduro and his wife, they've been charged with narco-terrorism. And as usual, there's lots of commentary on this, especially when the U.S. Flexes its muscles like this. And quite often, the U.S. is roundly condemned, and particularly if Donald Trump is in any way involved. But we've seen here, and around, this is in Toronto, in Canada, around the world, we've seen an awful lot of celebration about that, especially among the Venezuelan expat community. So, Quinton, you did the story this week on that. How about you tell us a little bit of what you found in talking to some of these expats?
Well, a lot of them really relayed the same story. They were awakened around 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, in Toronto, getting flooded with videos and social media posts on their WhatsApp. And they were speculating what was going on as they heard the military strikes. But there was a very quick summary surmisement that the U.S. must be involved in some way, considering that there were the strikes on the drug boats, there was the oil tanker blockades, and Donald Trump's rhetoric against the regime there. And they found out a little bit later in the morning that Maduro, really widely recognized by the international community as an illegitimate leader for at least 2 years with that 2024 election. So they are very pleased to see that his authoritarian regime has come to an end. But they really want to know what is going to happen next. I mean, Donald Trump came out with a Truth Social statement saying that there will be a transition, but there hasn't really been more details except that the U.S. is in charge right now, and they are going to rely on keeping certain Maduro loyalists in, the key positions to manage the country as long as they're on page with doing what the U.S. wants. And it appears that, oil going to the U.S. is going to be a big part of it. And then there was a Truth Social post yesterday about the U.S. being Venezuela's principal trading partner. So they say that it'll be good for the Venezuelan people, what the U.S. is doing, but the Venezuelans that I talked to said, hey, we like that Maduro's gone, but it's our country. We don't want to be sidelined. We want to have a voice at this in the decision making. So I think they're willing to play this out and be patient. They've waited so long for this day to come, but they want clarity sooner rather than later.
Yes, we can all only hope for some clarity. But I guess you just don't know what happens. Like everyone, a lot of people are saying this is a good thing right now. But we've seen this happen before. We've seen the U.S. go in countless places, and we've seen well, the not good results that have come out of it. Just look at Afghanistan, 20 years in there, and then they just cut and run. And Afghanistan's a disaster again, which I guess brings us to what one of our readers asked. He sent a comment to us, Gerard Baldock from out your way, Sherwood Park, Alberta. He probably asked the best questions on this intervention, and he asks it with a bit of a Catholic curiosity. Gerard asks, a Catholic moral lens ultimately asks whether such actions leave societies more capable of peace, justice, and human flourishing, or merely burdened with another generation of instability. What do you think? Are we going to see a stable country or an unstable country? What do you think,
That's going
Luke?
to be a big question, and I think that they want to have a return to the democratic norms, and that will give people confidence that there's the road to stability. So down the road, whether it be a few months from now, if they could have free and fair elections, that'll be a good sign that they're on that pathway. But I think something that they could do in the immediate term to give the Venezuelans hope that maybe things are going to be different and they're on the way to the brighter tomorrow is if political prisoners are released. I mean, that is what the Venezuelan opposition leadership has come out and said. Maria Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez, who was Maduro's opponent in 2024, they think, well, okay, maybe we're on the return to normalcy if thousands of people that are in prison because of opposing Maduro and speaking out against him, if they are able to experience the sunlight of freedom, that could be a good sign that they're on the way to stabilization.
Which, remember, before Maduro and Hugo Chavez before him, we had a very normal, I guess we can say normal as a country. It was economically sound, pretty rich, and the socialists came in and basically ruined things there. So, Luke, what's you look like you've got something to say on this.
Yeah, it's interesting because I read the news the same as everyone else, and I look to the reaction of the Venezuelan people as sort of a sign that maybe this was the right thing to do. We talked a lot about their celebrations. It seems like the people that are opposed to this are more people in my position elsewhere in the world that don't like the idea of, like you said, Mickey, maybe a United States president that just can't help himself once again, looking to do something outside of his borders, right? I have a similar feeling to that as well. I understand, at least to my extent, all the things going on in Venezuela that led to this. Where my confusion comes in is where it becomes the issue of the United States to make this drastic move into changing that. Again, I don't know if there's something that I'm missing with that. Quinton had said that there's going to be a massive amount. I believe I read somewhere between 30 to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil that are going to be sent to the United States at market price, which leads you to believe that there were some, I don't want to say ulterior, but maybe some additional added bonuses for the United States to do this, apart from simply getting Maduro out of his seat, right? And then we look at some things that Donald Trump's saying in the news now about Greenland and other countries. It just makes you think, maybe we've seen something like this before, like you had said, Mickey. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but my first thought was, does Greenland have oil we don't know about that I'm not familiar with? Because I don't know if when those glaciers start melting, if there's good material under there, but that was my first thought. Quinton,
hey, there's oil off of Newfoundland, and it's not that far from Greenland. So,
well, all
Quinton,
I could say is people should maybe take a look at reading the United States National Security Strategy that came out in November. A lot of interesting reading there about wanting to restore hemispheric dominance and wanting to ensure that the U.S. is maybe able to carve and really eke out the daylight and the room that geopolitical rivals have had in this area. So I would say that would be a good place to kind of get a deeper sense of what's going on. It's been online since November, and that's a very edifying resource to understand the moves being made right now.
Well, as you say, the question is, who are the U.S. to go in there? But, well, who else would go in? People have been waiting for, their white knight to ride in and save them in Venezuela. We've seen 8 million people flee the country, and you're hearing the stories of the people who have fled, leaving with, the clothes on their backs, and that's it, and got to go and start a new life somewhere else because of just how bad things are in Venezuela. So, but yes, I guess greater minds than ours will have to answer that question. So, but we'll see. But, of course, coming out of this, and you alluded to it, Luke, that a lot of the other countries have stuff to fear. And of course, when it comes to the usual suspects and have to get Canada in there, and how our inflated sense of worth in the world, I suppose, and that, now we're next. So, well, I don't think so, but we'll see. We all know what's been going on, the jokes about us being the 51st state, but Greenland, of course, looks like it's they're possibly under threat. We'll see what happens there, but I'm going to look at it from probably the ones who are probably should be the most fearful of anything Trump is going to do is Cuba, because you got to figure Cuba lies just under 150 kilometers off of the Florida, the Keys. So that's awfully close to and it's a tiny little island. So I would, and of course they've been an irritant to the U.S., an irritant to Donald Trump for forever. And so I would have to say that they've probably got more to fear than anyone else. Of course, there's other places that have got to have a little bit of fear as well, and that would be the Islamic State groups in Nigeria who felt the wrath on Christmas Day when U.S. Air Force came in and they attacked. As I guess, when was it? Back in about November. Donald Trump had made that first threat, said, leave the Christians alone or we're going to do something about it. Well, Christmas Day, he was there and he did something about it. And I know, Quinton, I know you were supposed to be off during that time, but you jumped in and you called to Nigeria and you talked to some of the Nigerians here in Canada. And what did you find out? Again, had found a lot of happiness with these strikes.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I was, it was during like Christmas dinner, like what we all were having on that day that I saw the notification on social media, and I immediately WhatsApped Father Oliver Ortiz from the McCurdy Diocese in Benue State, which is like one of the ground zero areas for this persecution and displacement of Christians. And just for context, I mean, we had a local, research and data agency in Nigeria really estimate that 32 Christians were being murdered for their beliefs per day in 2025. And there were millions of people that were displaced, and there were churches closed down out of fear of these different groups. So, I mean, there is a lot of hope right now when I talk to Father Ortiz, not only because of the strikes, but what happened a few days before. There was the release of hundreds of school kids and a dozen staff members who were abducted, from a St. Mary's school a few weeks beforehand. So, I mean, this is quite a stunning contrast where people were able to celebrate, hope and thinking that the oppression could at least be significantly lessened after previous holiday seasons like Easter and, the Christmas before was really defined by these big massacres. So it was quite something that this Islamic State was sent into retreat with these surgical strikes on Christmas Day. And I mean, the hopes is that I won't really have to do as many stories about, what's going on in Nigeria, because the situation will be demonstrably better in 2026. And that's what we hope and we pray. And I'll just say in conclusion is that the priest, Father Oliver Ortiz, is very thankful that Christians and Catholics, particularly in recent months, once this story became more widely known, that they have been praying for there to be some easement from this horror and persecution that's taken place. So there is gratitude from the Nigerian Catholic and Christian community for Christians and Catholics around the world.
Okay, let's hope that, as you say, that they will have some effect and things will be a little better in Nigeria. So I know that's a bit of the doom and gloom we've had to start this year off. So how about we get to a little bit of better news? And this actually dates back to just before Christmas, and that, of course, is the baby that was abandoned by its mother at St. Monica's Church in Midtown Toronto. And it was on the Sunday 11 a.m. Mass, I believe. And the people heard some cries from the baby coming from, I believe it was in the washroom. The baby was left in the washroom. So the baby was found, was taken to the hospital for sick children in downtown Toronto. And Luke, as you did in your story, told us in the story, baby is doing quite well right now.
Yeah, the best news out of that, of course, is that the baby is doing fine. And like you said, parishioners were alerted to some cries that they heard just outside of the parish washroom on I believe it was the second floor. And in a shoebox there was left an abandoned child. And once transported, Toronto police were informed, and they were able to transport the baby to sick kids. The baby's doing fine. The mother was also located shortly after. She was receiving care, and she is facing some charges right now regarding that abandonment. But while we tried to look into maybe getting some more direct reactions from the story from the parish or from Toronto Police Services, they had kind of thrown their hands up and said that the case had been sort of, quieted down a bit. So we took a look into, how did we get here? How did things like this happen? And I spoke with Birthright International, the executive director of Birthright International, based out of Toronto. They're a registered nonprofit that help mothers or expecting mothers with all sorts of different things. During our talk, it was kind of revealed to me that Birthright, it was my first time actually ever interacting with them, but they seem to be sort of a catch-all for mothers or expecting mothers. Well, they don't do direct support such as medical services or donation of specific items because of the rules surrounding that. They are there for non-judgmental, free, confidential help, whether it's support, access to information, resources, things like pregnancy tests and things of that sort. So it was a very eye-opening talk for me to see why resources like this are so important to be visible, so that mothers in similar situations don't have to feel like they're taking on this burden or this task alone, especially if it's an unexpected pregnancy where things like this can happen. So it was a great talk. I tried to reach out to some of the other centers as well. There's a Vita Center in Mississauga, lots of different Rose of Durham and Rose of Sharon up here in York region that do things like this. There's lots of great services out there that hopefully give mothers and expecting mothers the things they need when they come into situations like this.
Well, and in this situation, I know when you were talking to Victoria Summerhill Fox about, she's the granddaughter of the founder of Birthright, Louise Summerhill. And the one thing that really stood out is that, there's so many people that would condemn this mother for doing what she did. And Birthright is, no, they can't do that. And it's all very non-judgmental because they understand the desperate situation some people are in. I guess this is your classic case of, hey, walk a mile in my shoe. So maybe tell us a little bit about what Victoria had to say about such, desperate people and, not judging.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a thought that I had myself reading the initial report when we had heard about this. Is your mind? I asked her. I said, your mind automatically goes to what a horrible thing, what a horrible story. We have a mother that's being charged. We have a baby that's being abandoned. You have a sense of anger about you when you read it. I asked her if that was the same for her, and she said we have to ask ourselves what led to the decision where this mother thought the best option for herself and for her child was to leave it at a church for someone else to take care of or for someone else to find. And that really hit me as well. And it's a question that I think a lot of us have to ask ourselves when we see stories like this pop up or we see instances like this. There's a lot of things always going on behind the scenes that we simply don't know about until we ask or until we're able to amplify these services that Birthright have and similar organizations have. That's one of their main messages, is always being free of cost, non-judgmental, confidential. They'll accept anyone in for support or for their services. And, it's something now where you reread the story and you think this really is a story about how we can support people in situations like this, and not condemn them based off of the headline. Yeah.
Yeah, we only need to look back to Exodus 2 and the story of Moses here. Moses' mother hid him in the waterproofed papyrus basket among the Nile reeds to save him from the Pharaoh who'd wanted to kill all the Hebrew children. And as fate would have it, it was the Pharaoh's daughter who found Moses and adopted him. And we all know what happened after that. The great Moses set him on his path to liberate the Israelites. So hopefully there be, several years down the road, we'll be able to tell the same sort of success story with this baby. But you guys have both dealt with pregnancy centers before, and of course they've come under attack. I know, especially Quinton, you've written about this before, trying to take the charitable status from places like Birthright, Vita Manor, and that. So hopefully that's not going to be the case.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what I was going to jump in. They unfortunately are barraged in various media outlets and in the general public too much. And they're misunderstood when really these pregnancy care centers, crisis pregnancy care centers, are really the places that exemplify, a generosity of spirit, perhaps better than almost any entity out there, because they are just willing to open their heart to whatever, mother comes through their door. And they are just there to give that non-judgmental help. And they believe in the power of you save a life, kind of going on what you just said. You never know what that baby could go on to achieve. And we have to be open to ourselves to valuing the potential of each and every preborn child. And these crisis pregnancy centers, they need to be celebrated, and they do not need to be attacked in our culture.
Yeah, I joke that these centers are kind of like CAA or life insurance, where you don't think about them a lot until you need them or till someone really needs them, and then it's the number one thing that you could have paid for or supported or had ready and available, right? So I think Quinton said it all in that answer. How can we not support institutions and organizations that help people take care or help people who are unable to take care of the most precious thing we have, which is new life and growing life? So to see the attack on them in recent years has been disheartening, but I think stories like this go to show why they're so necessary, and not just necessary to exist, necessary to be visible and accessible to these women as well. Because if this mother knew that Birthright Toronto was right down the corner, we maybe never see that initial article, right? You never know. So
that's true. That's true. So, well, I think we're going to have to go out on this first edition of the new year of Registered on this high note. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us, and please keep listening, tuning in over into the new year as we introduce a few more things to this podcast. We'll have special guests and just a few other things. We're still developing them ourselves. Getting our feet wet, as I said at the beginning of this. So. We thank you very much for joining us. We wish you a happy new year and hope the best for 2026 to all of you. And just a reminder to stay in tune with all the Catholic news out there that's ready to read at catholicregister.org. Again, thanks very much for joining us.